Let's start with the module 1 of the breast. In this module, we will cover anatomy, congenital anomalies of the breast. So, one thing you should remember is before knowing to any pathology of any organ or tissue, we should know the normal anatomy. So, coming to the breast, it's a modified sweat gland. It is located in the superficial fascia, that is subcutaneously, extending vertically from second to sixth rib, horizontally from the lateral border of the sternum to the mid-axillary line. So it mainly the whole component is in the subcutaneous plane, except for a small portion anteriorly and laterally that pierces the deep fascia through the foramen of Langer, and a part lies deep in the deep fascia. So the anatomical importance is whenever there is enlargement of this part of the breast, it may mimic a lipoma. And horizontally, it extends from the lateral border of the sternum to the mid-axillary line. So from above to below, if you see, there is skin. Below that, there's subcutaneous tissue. Then there is the breast mass. It rests on the pectoralis major. 2/3 of the breast rests on the pectoralis major muscle. You have to remember 3 muscles. That is pectoralis major. Then there is serratus anterior, and below external oblique muscles. These 3 muscles are in relation to the breast tissue. So 2/3 of the breast rests on the pectoralis major, which in turn below is the pectoral fascia. And laterally a part of it is on the serratus anterior. And below it's on the external oblique muscles that separates it from the aponeurosis. And one important thing is this breast tissue is from the skin. It is attached to the pectoral fascia with bands of connective tissue. These are called ligaments of Cooper. These are the suspensory ligaments of the breast. The importance is in carcinoma of the breast, when these ligaments are infiltrated, so they cause pulling of the skin. That causes the dimpling. So that causes the dimpling of the skin in carcinoma. That implicates that the ligaments of Cooper are affected. Now coming to the blood supply. The main source of blood supply, 2/3 of the breast, is supplied from the axillary artery and 1/3 from the internal mammary artery. So here you see the axillary artery and here is the internal mammary. So the main branches of the axillary artery are the thoracoacromial artery, the lateral thoracic artery. So the mainly because it lies in the from second to sixth rib, the main branches of the second, third and fourth intercostal spaces. The arteries, the branches from the internal mammary supply these muscles, and there are few lateral branches from the posterior intercostal arteries. So these are the main arterial supply of the blood of the breast. And then the venous drainage is mainly into the main veins, the superior vena cava and the axillary vein, internal mammary vein. There may be some cross flow of the blood to the opposite breast also. One important thing about the venous drainage is from the lateral. So the venous drainage follows the arteries as well. So from the lateral, from the posterior intercostals, the venous drainage, they may communicate with the Batson plexus of the vertebra. So the Batson plexus of the vertebra, they are valveless. So whenever there is any carcinoma of the breast, whenever there is any metastasis, so the process to the Batson plexus, and that is responsible for the metastasis you see in the bone, especially the lumbar vertebra, which are first affected in carcinoma breast. So you may think, when the breast is in the thorax, why are the lumbar vertebrae affected? Because there is drop down. These vertebral Batson plexus are valveless. So it metastasis into the lumbar vertebra, long bones of the leg, and then later on the thoracic vertebra are affected. So that is the importance of the venous supply here. Now coming to the lymphatic drainage, 2/3 of the breast tissue is drained into the axillary group of lymph nodes, and around 20% into the internal mammary group of lymph nodes, and the 5% into the anti-abdominal wall lymph nodes, into the supraclavicular, like that. So the lateral quadrants drain into the anterior axillary. So from the lateral portion, 75% of the breast tissue, the main mass of the breast is in the upper outer quadrant. So that is the major bulk of the breast. So this drains into axillary group of lymph nodes. The medial quadrants, that is inner medial quadrants, they drain into the internal thoracic group of lymph nodes. And a few they follow the posterior intercostals into the posterior intercostal nodes. And some vessels communicate with the lymph of the opposite breast and with the lymph vessels of the anterior abdominal wall, that is subdiaphragmatic and subperitoneal lymph plexuses. Now when you see the pictorial diagram of this, these group are the axillary group of lymph nodes and these are the internal mammary group of lymph nodes. So the whole of the outer portion of the breast, these are drained into the axillary group of lymph nodes. The medial ones, they drain into the internal mammary. So there is some cross seepage into the opposite breast and there is some drop down into the abdominal wall lymph vessels. So here the axillary group of lymph nodes, they are in turn divided into 5 groups. So when you see the axilla, remember the axilla. So lymph nodes along the anterior axillary fold, these are anterior group. Along the posterior group, posterior fold of the axilla, they are subscapular or posterior nodes. Along the medial border of the humerus, they are the lateral group of the lymph nodes. And there are the central group here and then the apical. So when it comes to the surgical part, the group of lymph nodes are divided into level 1, level 2 and level 3. So the level 1 group of lymph nodes are these, that is anterior, posterior, lateral. The level 2 nodes, I'll show in the next slide. So here, these group of lymph nodes, these are level 1, that is pectoral, subscapular and lateral. Okay, and these the central group, these are level 2 and these are apical, these are level 3. So what divides these levels? What this pectoralis minor. Pectoralis minor is the muscle which distinguishes this, which divides the nodes into these 3 levels which are of prognostic significance. So level 1, one thing you have to remember is axillary reverse mapping. So ARM, the dye is injected into the upper part of the arm here, so that the dye, the drainage delineates the lymph nodes. And then the other important thing is application is sentinel lymph node biopsy. That we will discuss when we come to the carcinoma breast discussion. Okay. So the pectoralis minor muscle divides the lymph levels into 1, 2 and 3. Level 1 is, as said earlier, anterior, posterior and the lateral. The level 2 group of lymph nodes, they comprise the central lymph nodes. A few apical may fall into this and interpectoral or rotors. So the lymph nodes below pectoralis minor are the level 1 group of lymph nodes. The lymph nodes lying on the pectoralis minor and below the pectoralis minor muscles, that is in between pectoralis major and pectoralis minor muscles, they are interpectoral lymph nodes. These are rotors nodes. These fall into level 2. Above that is the level 3, that is Halsted. Another name is Halsted, that is apical. So above the pectoralis minor, that is apical axillary lymph nodes. This is the level 3. Okay. Now coming to the pathology of the breast. So this is the normal this is the normal anatomy. So any deviation from the normal anatomy, we consider it as pathology. Okay, so in pathology of, say, for any organ, it is very easy if you remember like this. There are congenital things, there are inflammatory, then there are benign, then malignant. So you divide the, when you study a particular organ or a tissue or anything, as you divide like this, that will be easy for you. Congenital, then inflammatory, then benign, then malignant. Coming to the congenital anomalies. Breast, how is breast developed? So during intrauterine life, during 4th and 5th week of intrauterine life, there is an ectodermal ridge which forms running from the axilla to the groin. Okay, from here till here, from axilla to the groin. So what happens? As the fetus develops, the whole of the ectodermal ridge disappears except for a small portion in the pectoral area, that is on the anterior chest wall normally. So thelia, what you have to remember is thelia is nipple, mastia is breast tissue. Okay, a polythelia means more than one, that is supernumerary nipples. Usually they occur over the breast or they can away from the nipple. Okay. Then athelia. Athelia is absence of nipple. So mainly in the accessory breast tissue, you don't find these nipples. Then there is polymastia. Polymastia is more than one breast. So usually the accessory breast, there may be some remains fault in the disappearance of the ectodermal ridge. So along this line, there may be accessory breast along the middle ridge. If they are without any ducts, it may be confused with a lipoma. Then amastia. Amastia is, there is no breast development at all. It is very rare actually. So when there is absence of the breast, usually the sternal portion of the pectoralis major is also absent. So that is called Poland syndrome. Then there is amasia. Amasia means nipple is there, but there is no breast development. So these are some of the congenital anomalies of the breast. So what tissue is composed of the breast? It is mainly ectoderm. It is a modified sweat gland. So the ducts, the acini and the lobules, these are developed from the ectoderm, and the supporting tissue around, the supporting is developed from the mesenchyme. So it is mainly ectodermal and mesodermal. The functional unit is ectodermal in origin. Coming to the inflammatory disorders. The most common is mastitis in the inflammatory disorders. So usually what happens? Usually appears in lactating women. It is usually unilateral. There is history of lactation. In your clinic, if you sit in your office and a young lady, she comes walking in with the febrile woman, like sick look, breast is enlarged, it's inflamed, all inflammatory signs are that it is tender, inflamed, there is maybe redness, there may be increase in the warmth, and the source of infection. So how it develops actually, this is the most common infection. There may not be any overt clinical signs, but sometimes they present only with the tenderness of the breast. There is history of lactation usually. This occurs usually due to cracked nipples or fissures on the nipple area, which may not be visible to the naked eye. But what is a fissure? Actually, it's a tear in the break in the epithelium. So when the baby suckles, the source of the infection is usually the oral cavity of the feeding infant. The most common organism is the staph, Staphylococcus aureus. So when the baby feeds on the cracked nipples, and milk is a good source for the bacterial growth. So there is in all epithelium acts as a barrier to any infection. So when there is a break in the infection, when there is a fissure in the epithelium, the infection spreads into the ducts and the functional unit is usually infected. What is the functional unit? It is the acini lobules with the duct. There are 15 to 20 lobules which open into the nipple. So usually this is infected. It is usually unilateral. So what you have to do, you have to first reassure the patient. Then ask her to continue feeding the baby. If she is not able to, if she has some apprehension feeding the baby, she has to empty the breast, because any stagnation of milk that may aggravate the condition. Give her antibiotics. What antibiotics? Amoxicillin clavulanic acid. That is the best antibiotic. Then give her anti-inflammatory agents. Ask her to continue breastfeeding. That is the most important thing you have to say. So if it is not treated properly, if mastitis is not treated properly, and if the breast is full of milk, then that may lead to a complication, breast abscess. So that is a complication of mastitis. If in early stage, if mastitis is not treated properly, that may lead to breast abscess. So in breast abscess, there is usually a fluctuant swelling mass which is warm, there is tenderness, there is fluctuation. You can ask her, you can get a sonogram done. You can actually aspirate with a needle and see there will be pus coming. So this is a complication. What you have to do, any abscess, you have to drain. You have to remove the pus, give her antibiotics. Then, so that will be a problem if this is neglected. Okay. These two, mastitis is very common inflammatory condition. Then comes breast abscess. Then there is periductal mastitis. Periductal, around the duct. It is infection. And so any word in any terminology, the half the meaning is in the word itself. So if you break down the word, you will get half the pathology of the disease. Okay. There is infection of the ducts. It's usually under the nipple. It presents as a subareolar mass. Usually it is due to vitamin A deficiency. So actually now you have to go back to your histology. There will be lobules that lead it to ducts. So the ducts are usually lined by columnar epithelium and they are myoepithelial cells. What is the function of the myoepithelial cells? They help in contraction or propulsion of the milk that is secreted, or say any secretions through the ducts outside. So whenever there is any default in the function, any fault in the function of the myoepithelial cells, that leads to non-contractility of the ducts and stagnation of the secretions, or say the milk, and that leads to infection. So usually it occurs due to vitamin A deficiency. Vitamin A helps in differentiation of cells, and 90% there is a history of smoking. There will be squamous metaplasia. So these myoepithelial cells are replaced by the squamous, which are non-contractile. So there is trapping of milk. There is infection. Usually it is self-resolution is there. Otherwise you have to give her antibiotics. And then if it is not resolved with that, you have to do fistulectomy. Means you have to help the secretion to drain out. You have to create a fistula. So that is the treatment of periductal mastitis.